Today we will venture into the depths of the densest and most mysterious forests with 7 terrifying stories of people who got lost in the woods. Prepare to hear chilling accounts of disappearing trails, unexplained sounds through the trees, and eerie encounters as the sun sets and darkness takes over. We'll explore stories of hikers, photographers, and adventurers who faced the darker side of nature when they lost their way. So sit back, make sure all the lights are on, and let's begin this spine-tingling journey. Oh, and before the forest swallows you, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave your like. This really helps the channel and ensures you don't miss out on any terrifying content like this. Let's go. Marks on trees. The case of the group of hikers in the Białowieża forest was documented by the Polish National Police as one of the most disturbing incidents in the region's recent history. The events of those 4 days were reconstructed from search and rescue records, forensic evidence, and the testimonies of survivors. Thomas Weber, a 36-year-old experienced guide, was leading a group of 4 tourists on a nature photography expedition. The group included Canadian couple Megan and Ryan Foster, Australian photographer Abby Collins, and German biology student Lucas Schmidt. On the 2nd day of the expedition, a dense and unexpected fog descended over the forest, drastically reducing visibility. Thomas's GPS began giving inconsistent readings, leaving the group disoriented. It was then that Lucas noticed something peculiar. Small marks carved into some trees. 3 parallel lines followed by a directional arrow. Thomas, although he didn't, recognized the markings, suggested following them in hopes of finding a main trail. For 2 hours, the group followed the markings. Abby began to notice them becoming more elaborate, including additional symbols. The surrounding forest became denser, with fewer signs of established trails. At dusk, they arrived at a clearing where the markings converged circularly. In the center, they found an elevated hunting shelter. Lucas discovered small, camouflaged holes in the surrounding trees, apparently observation points. Alarmed, Thomas decided that they should leave the clearing immediately. As they walked away, they heard low whistles coming from different directions, as if they were being surrounded. "I realized we were being hunted," Thomas said later. "Someone had deliberately drawn us to that area." The group quickened their pace, moving silently through the dense vegetation. They camped in a natural depression, keeping watch in shifts. Abby glimpsed distant flashlight lights in the night. The next morning, they discovered fresh footprints circling their camp and a new mark carved into a nearby tree. Abandoning their original route, the group now focused solely on leaving the forest. During the escape, Lucas disappeared while photographing evidence of the markings. A brief search revealed only his broken camera. With panic growing, Thomas made the difficult decision to continue moving forward. After an hour of brisk walking, the group reached the edge of the forest and found help. A search operation was mobilized. 3 days later, teams found an elaborate system of false trails, all marked with the same pattern. The trails converged on several hunting zones, clearings with camouflaged observation shelters. In one of these shelters, they found missing hikers' equipment, including documents from at least 7 people. Lucas was found alive 5 days later, hiding in a cave. He was injured by an animal trap and reported being chased by a masked man. The perpetrator, identified as Andrzej Kowalski, a dismissed former ranger, was captured in one of his hideouts. The investigation revealed that he had developed an elaborate human hunting system using his skills to lure and capture walkers. For Thomas and his group, the experience was traumatic. The most disturbing thing, Thomas reflected, is to think about how many people followed those markings, believing they were being guided to safety, only to be led into a predator's trap. The case prompted a review of safety protocols in the Kaikudi forest. including unofficial trail checks and educating visitors about authorized markings. For rangers, the incident serves as a grim reminder that not all signs in the forest lead to safety, and that sometimes true danger comes from those who know nature better than anyone else. The guard's hut. The case of Emma and Jack Lawson has been documented by Police Scotland as one of the most disturbing incidents in the recent history of Cairngorms National Park. The events of those 48 hours were reconstructed from police records, forensic evidence, and Lawson's own testimony. Emma, a 32-year-old nurse, and Jack, a 34-year-old teacher, had planned a weekend walk in the Scottish Highlands to celebrate their 5th wedding anniversary. What was supposed to be a romantic adventure quickly turned into a nightmare when an unexpected storm caught them off guard in the remote area of Glenfeshie. The rains started suddenly, and within minutes we were soaked to the skin, reported Jack. The wind was so strong we could barely stand. Disoriented and with reduced visibility, the couple struggled to find their way back when they spotted a small wooden cabin through the curtain of rain. The weathered sign identified the location as a ranger station. It felt like a miracle at the time, Emma said, a safe haven in the midst of chaos. The door was not locked, and the interior of the cabin, although dusty, offered welcome protection from the elements. There was a small fireplace, a single bed, and a table with chairs. In one corner, shelves held old radio equipment and maps of the region. While Jack tried to start a fire, Emma explored the cabin for dry towels or blankets. That's when he noticed something strange. A locked door at the back of the main room. There were deep scratches on the inside of the door, Emma described, her voice shaking as she recalled, as if someone had desperately tried to get out. Intrigued and slightly alarmed, Emma took a closer look at the cabin. Under the bed, he found a metal box. Inside, there were dozens of small objects, watches, rings, wallets, and even passports of different nationalities. My stomach sank when I realized what I was looking at, Emma said. They were personal belongings, things no one would voluntarily leave behind. Jack, now equally distraught, noticed a journal partially hidden among the maps on the shelf. The D entries detailed observations about hikers passing through the area, with notes about their routes, equipment, and potential as targets. The couple quickly realized they had taken shelter in the lair of a predator, someone who used the facade of a ranger to lure and capture vulnerable hikers. Their horror deepened when they heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching. The cabin. Through the fogged window, they saw the silhouette of a tall man carrying what appeared to be a rifle. At that moment, we knew we had to get out of there immediately, Jack reported. Panicking, the couple frantically searched for an escape route. Emma discovered that the back window could be opened, although with difficulty due to rust. While Jack quickly gathered his belongings, Emma used her medical experience to improvise a first aid kit from available supplies. Seconds before the front door opened, Emma and Jack escaped through the back window, plunging into the still raging storm. They heard an angry scream behind them as the cabin's occupant realized that his guests had fled. What followed was a terrifying chase through the dark, soggy forest. The couple could hear their stalker calling out to them, sometimes in a deceptively friendly voice, other times with explicit threats. He knew the area a lot better than we did, Jack said. Several times I thought we had lost him, only to hear him approaching again. The heavy rain made navigation difficult, but it also helped mask their tracks. Emma and Jack used all their physical and mental stamina to keep moving, knowing that stopping would mean a death sentence. After hours of desperate escape, the couple finally spotted distant lights, a small village on the edge of the national park. Exhausted and on the verge of hypothermia, they managed to reach the safety of a local pub, where shocked residents immediately called the police and paramedics. The subsequent investigation revealed the true extent of the horror. The man in the cabin was Malcolm Fraser, a former ranger who had been fired 5 years earlier for erratic behavior. He had turned the abandoned outpost into his base of operations for a series of kidnappings and murders. At the cabin and a nearby underground bunker, police found evidence linking Fraser to at least 9 unsolved disappearances over the past 3 years. The diary detailed his hunts, and a macabre collection of trophies was discovered hidden in wall panels. Fraser was captured 2 days later, trying to escape to the highlands. During his trial, psychiatrists diagnosed a combination of antisocial personality disorder and paranoid delusions, exacerbated by years of isolation. For Emma and Jack Lawson, the experience left deep psychological scars. The most disturbing thing, Emma reflected, is to think of how many people sought shelter in that cabin, believing they were safe, only to never be seen again. The case has led to a complete review of safety protocols in the Cairngorms National Park, with new measures including regular checks of abandoned structures and an improved system of recording and monitoring walkers. And for visitors to the Scottish Highlands, the story of Guardian's Hut serves as a grim reminder that sometimes the most dangerous shelter is the one that appears safest at first glance. The last transmission, Julian Parker's case, was documented by the Royal Malaysian Police as one of the most disturbing incidents involving foreign documentary filmmakers in the country's recent history. The events of those 7 days were reconstructed from Parker's own footage, found later. Julian, a 35-year-old British documentary filmmaker, had travelled to the ancient rainforest of Taman Negara to film a documentary about rare insect species. Experienced in filming in remote locations, he had informed authorities of his planned route and carried appropriate survival gear. For the first 3 days, everything went normally. Julian's footage showed stunning images of dense rainforest, enthusiastic commentary on specimens found, and methodical notes on their location. On the 4th day, his recordings began to show signs of concern. "Something strange is happening," he narrated to the camera. "The colored ribbons I placed to mark my way back are gone. All of them." Julian tried to use his GPS, but the signal was intermittent under the dense forest canopy. He decided to follow a stream, knowing that it would eventually lead him to more open areas. His improvised markings on trees using his pocket knife also began to disappear. The carvings appeared to have been deliberately covered with mud. "I'm starting to think I'm not alone here," Julian said in a late-night recording, his voice tense, as he whispered to the camera in his small camp. "Twice today, I felt like I was being watched." On the morning of the 5th day, Julian found his water supply contaminated with dirt. His first aid kit had been rummaged through, and essential items were missing. The camera captured his growing despair as he tried to rationalize the events. "Maybe it's some curious animal, or maybe I'm just being paranoid," he tried to convince himself, but his expression revealed that he didn't believe that. That night, footage showed Julian waking up with a start to a nearby sound. Pointing the night vision camera into the darkness, he briefly captured what appeared to be a human figure moving through the trees before disappearing. "There's someone following me," he whispered, fear evident in his voice. "I don't know who or why, but it's no coincidence." On the 6th day, Julian abandoned his original mission and focused solely on finding his way back. His footage became more erratic, interspersed with moments when he turned off the camera to conserve battery power. In one disturbing moment, he filmed what appeared to be a recent campsite, not his own, with equipment he recognized as his own missing items. "He's playing with me," Julian concluded, exhaustion and fear evident on his face. "Whoever it is keeping me lost on purpose." In the last broadcast, Julian filmed himself building a makeshift raft to try and navigate the stream that had widened. As he worked, the camera, positioned in a nearby tree, captured something he didn't see. A partially camouflaged figure, silently watching him from less than 20 meters away. "This might be my last resort," Julian said to the camera. "If anyone finds this footage, please let my family know I tried to get back." The recording ends abruptly when Julian, already in the water with his improvised raft, suddenly looks back with an expression of terror. A quick movement, a clipped scream, and then static. 3 weeks later, a search team found Julian's camera stuck in riverbank roots 6 miles from his last known campsite. His body was never found, but forensic analysis of the footage revealed disturbing details. In several scenes, when digitally enhanced, it was possible to see the same camouflaged figure observing Julian at different times. Tracking experts identified that the figure used advanced camouflage techniques and silent movement, suggesting military or survival training. More disturbingly, audio analysis revealed barely perceptible sounds of someone following Julian, deliberately staying out of sight, but always close. At times, when Julian slept, breathing could be heard near the camera, someone examining the equipment while the documentary filmmaker was unconscious. The police investigation identified 3 other cases of disappearances in the same region over the previous 5 years, all involving lone people who had ventured beyond the marked tourist areas. For Taman Negara Rangers, the case has led to a complete review of safety protocols, with new measures including regular checks of unofficial trails and a ban on solo expeditions into remote areas. And for documentary filmmakers and explorers, Julian Parker's footage serves as a grim reminder that sometimes, when you're documenting the wild, someone may be documenting you, with intentions far more sinister than simple recording. The case remains officially open, with Malaysian authorities occasionally receiving reports of sightings of a forest man who watches tourists from a distance before disappearing into the dense vegetation of one of the world's oldest rainforests. What's up, guys? The stories of people lost in the forest are chilling even now, aren't they? If you're enjoying these scary stories, how about taking a quick stop and subscribing to the channel? Just click the sign up button below and take the opportunity to leave your like too. This really helps the channel grow and motivates me to continue bringing you more terrifying content like this. It's quick and makes all the difference. Now, shall we go back to our forest horror stories? There's still a lot of fear ahead. 4. Marked territory. Elena Mendoza's case was documented by the Peruvian National Police as one of the most disturbing incidents involving lost hikers in the recent history of the Amazon region. The events of those 6 days were reconstructed from police records, evidence found in the forest, and Elena's own testimony. Elena, a 32-year-old biologist from Spain, had traveled to the Peruvian Amazon to collect samples of medicinal plants as part of her doctoral research. Experienced in fieldwork, she had informed local authorities of her planned route and carried equipment suitable for jungle survival. On the 3rd day of her expedition, torrential rain forced her to divert from her original path. When the storm finally passed, Elena realized that she was completely disoriented, unable to determine the direction of base camp. "Initially, I didn't panic," Elena reported. "I had a few days' worth of supplies, and I knew I would eventually find a river I could follow." It was during her attempted reorientation that Elena noticed the first structure, a small arrangement of intertwined branches forming a sort of pyramid with what appeared to be small animal bones hanging from the ends. The structure seemed deliberately placed in the path. "I found it curious but not alarming," she explained. "I thought it might be some marker left by local tribes." As she continued her journey, Elena found more of these structures, increasingly larger and more elaborate. Some contained feathers, animal teeth, and, most disturbingly, what appeared to be personal items, pieces of fabric, fragments of colored plastic, even what appeared to be a broken eyeglass lens. On the fourth day, Elena found a different structure. A small, rudimentary hut made of palm leaves and branches. Inside, there was evidence of recent human occupation, still warm ash from a fire and food remains. That's when I realized I wasn't alone, said Eleanor, and whoever was there was watching me. That night, camped in a small clearing, Eleanor heard sounds of movement in the surrounding vegetation. In the morning, he discovered that his backpack had been disturbed and some items were missing: a knife, a lighter, and some energy bars. Even more alarming, he found a new structure just 20 meters from where he had slept, a kind of rudimentary doll made of twigs with his own scarf tied around what would be his neck. Determined to find help, Elena decided to follow what appeared to be a more well-trodden trail. That was when he saw in the distance a human figure moving quickly between the trees. The figure, a wild-looking man with long hair and beard, seemed to be deliberately keeping his distance, but always visible enough to be noticed. He wanted me to follow him, concluded Elena. It was like a game of cat and mouse. After hours of following the elusive figure, Eleanor arrived at an area where the trees had been marked with symbols carved into the bark, repeating patterns of 3 parallel lines. In the center of this marked area, he found a clearing with a more substantial cabin. Around the cabin, there were dozens of objects hanging from ropes: identity documents, watches, broken cameras, and torn backpacks. With growing horror, Elena realized that she was looking at the belongings of other people who had been lost in that same area. As she considered her options, Elena heard a low whistle behind her. Turning around, he saw the man less than 10 meters away, holding a rudimentary spear. His eyes, although wild, showed a sharp, calculating intelligence. Elena used her crisis training and maintained eye contact, speaking calmly in Spanish and then English. The man did not respond verbally, but his posture changed slightly. Slowly, Elena took a photo of her family out of her pocket and showed it to the man. Something about this gesture seemed to spark a reaction. The man partially lowered his gun and made a gesture that Elena interpreted as an order to follow him. For the next few hours, the man guided Elena through the forest, keeping his distance, but always making sure she followed him. Eventually, they arrived at the bank of a river where, to their surprise, there was a small outpost of researchers. Subsequent investigation revealed that the man was likely a loner who had chosen to live isolated in the woods for decades. Similar to the whole man documented in Brazil, he had developed an elaborate territorial system to keep intruders at bay. Unlike other cases, however, this man seemed to have a code of his own. He tested intruders before deciding their fate. Those who showed respect or some human connection, as Elena did with the photograph, were guided out of their territory. The others were not so lucky. For Elena Mendoza, the experience fundamentally changed her understanding of human isolation and territoriality. The most disturbing thing, she reflected, was realizing that I was being evaluated all the time. My every reaction was being observed and judged by someone who had created their own rules of survival, completely separate from what we consider civilization. The case led to a review of safety protocols for researchers in the region, with new guidance on how to recognize and respond to signs of territories marked by isolated forest dwellers. And for local guides, the incident reinforced what many already knew. Some parts of the forest have unofficial guardians, men and women who have chosen complete solitude, but who nonetheless watch, judge, and sometimes decide the fate of those who enter their silently marked domains. 5. Voices in the forest. The case of the tourist group in Aokigahara Forest was documented by the Tokyo Metropolitan Police as one of the most disturbing incidents in the recent history of the famous Forest of Silence. The events of those 3 days were reconstructed from police records and the testimonies of survivors. Sarah, Michael, David, and May, 4 friends of different nationalities studying in Tokyo, planned a day hike through Aokigahara Forest. Despite the site's dark reputation, the group was interested in its natural beauty and unique geological formations. "We knew about the forest's reputation, but we were skeptical and rational," Sarah later explained. "We were more worried about bears than anything else." The group followed basic safety recommendations: report their route, take extra supplies, and mark their path with biodegradable tape. Everything went normally for the first few hours, until a sudden change in weather brought dense fog to the area. "Visibility dropped to less than 10 meters within minutes," Michael reported. "Suddenly, we couldn't see the markings we had left." As they tried to reorient themselves using compasses on their phones, the group heard a distant female voice calling for help in English. The voice sounded distressed, and after a brief discussion, the group decided to investigate. They followed the approximate direction of the calls, which seemed to come from different points, always moving deeper into the forest. "Something didn't feel right," May recalled. The voice sounded strangely mechanical, sometimes identical in intonation, as if it were a recording. After almost an hour following the calls, the group realized they were completely lost. The markings they had made were no longer visible, and the fog made it impossible to determine the direction of the sun. It was then that they heard a second voice, male speaking in Japanese, apparently coming from another direction. The voice sounded like it belonged to someone injured, begging for medical assistance. The group, already apprehensive, decided to split into pairs. David and May would follow the Japanese voice, while Sarah and Michael would continue in the direction of the female voice in English. They agreed to stay in touch by phone and meet again in 30 minutes, regardless of the result. "It was a decision we regretted almost immediately," Sarah said. "As soon as we separated, both voices stopped completely. When they tried to call each other, they discovered there was no cell phone signal." After 45 minutes of waiting at the agreed point, Sarah and Michael realized that something had happened to their friends. Meanwhile, David and May had followed the Japanese voice to a small clearing where they found a camouflaged audio device attached to a tree. Before they could fully process what this meant, May was hit with something, possibly a tranquilizer. Dart, and fell unconscious. David fled in panic, trying to find his way back to the others. In his disoriented flight, he stumbled upon a small collection of backpacks and hiking gear, clearly belonging to other visitors to the forest. Sarah and Michael, trying to find their friends, began to notice strange little structures in the forest. Branches arranged in unnatural patterns and markings on trees they hadn't made. "That's when we realized we had been deliberately separated," Michael explained. "Someone had planned this." As night approached, Sarah and Michael heard sounds of movement in the vegetation around them. Deliberate human footsteps, circling their position. Occasionally, they would glimpse a figure in the distance, always moving quickly out of sight when noticed. Using basic survival techniques, the pair found a small cave formed by volcanic rocks and took shelter there, keeping watch at night. In the early hours of the morning, they heard May's voice calling to them, but after their previous experience, they suspected it could be another recording or imitation. The next morning, David managed to find Sarah and Michael. Together, they decided that their only option was to try to leave the forest and get help for May. Using natural navigation techniques, they followed the slope of the land, knowing that they would eventually reach a more open area. At noon, the group heard the sound of a helicopter. Using Michael's small mirror, they were able to signal the aircraft. A rescue team, already mobilized due to the group's failure to return the previous day, located and rescued them. An intensive search was launched to find May. She was discovered 24 hours later, disoriented but alive, tied up in a small rudimentary cabin hidden in the woods. The cabin contained audio equipment, recording devices, and other hikers' belongings. The police investigation revealed that a 45-year-old man, identified only as Tanaka, had been secretly living in the forest for almost 3 years. A former tour guide with psychological problems, he had developed an elaborate system to attract and capture visitors using recordings of calls for help. For Sarah, Michael, David, and May, the experience left deep psychological scars. The most disturbing thing, Sarah reflected, was realizing how easily we were manipulated. Our instinct to help someone in danger was used against us, turning us into prey. The case led to a review of security protocols in Aokigahara Forest, with new measures, including more frequent patrols and specific warnings about the fake voices tactic that had been documented in at least 2 other previously unreported incidents. The false rescue, the case of the tourist group in Aokigahara Forest, was documented by the Tokyo Metropolitan Police as one of the most disturbing incidents in the recent history of the famous Forest of Silence. The events of those 3 days were reconstructed from police records and the testimonies of survivors. Sarah, Michael, David, and May, 4 friends of different nationalities studying together in Tokyo, had planned a day hike through the Aokigahara Forest, known for its dense vegetation and unsettling natural silence. Despite the site's dark reputation, the group was interested in its natural beauty and unique geological formations. "We knew about the forest's reputation, but we were all skeptical and rational," Sarah later explained. "We were more worried about bears than anything else." The group had followed basic safety recommendations: inform someone of their route, carry extra supplies, and mark their path with biodegradable tape. Everything went normally for the first few hours until a sudden change in weather brought dense fog to the area. Visibility dropped to less than 10 meters in a matter of minutes, Michael reported. Suddenly, we couldn't see the markings we had left. As they tried to reorient themselves using compasses on their phones, the group heard something disturbing: a distant female voice calling for help in English. "Hello? Is anyone there? Please help me." The voice sounded genuinely distressed, and after a brief discussion, the group decided to investigate. They followed the approximate direction of the calls, which seemed to come from different points, always moving deeper into the forest. "Something didn't feel right," May recalled. The voice sounded strangely mechanical, sometimes identical in intonation, as if it were a recording. After almost an hour following the calls, the group realized they were completely lost. The markings they had made were no longer visible, and the fog made it impossible to determine the direction of the sun. It was then that they heard a second voice, this time male, speaking in Japanese, apparently coming from another direction. The voice sounded like it belonged to someone injured, begging for medical assistance. The group, already apprehensive, decided to split into pairs. David and May would follow the Japanese voice, while Sarah and Michael would continue in the direction of the female voice in English. They agreed to stay in touch by phone and meet again in 30 minutes, regardless of the result. "It was a decision we regretted almost immediately," Sarah said. "As soon as we separated, both voices stopped completely. When they tried to call each other, they discovered there was no cell phone signal. After 45 minutes of waiting at the agreed point, Sarah and Michael realized that something had happened to their friends. Meanwhile, David and May had followed the Japanese voice to a small clearing where they found a camouflaged audio device attached to a tree. Before they could fully process what this meant, May was hit with something, possibly a tranquilizer dart, and fell unconscious. David fled in panic, trying to find his way back to the others. In his disoriented flight, he stumbled upon something disturbing. A small collection of backpacks and hiking gear, clearly belonging to other visitors to the forest. Meanwhile, Sarah and Michael, trying to find their friends, began to notice strange little structures in the forest, branches arranged in unnatural patterns and markings on trees they hadn't made. That's when we realized we had been deliberately separated, Michael explained. Someone had planned this. As night approached, Sarah and Michael heard sounds of movement in the vegetation around them, not animals, but deliberate human footsteps circling their position. Occasionally, they would glimpse a figure in the distance, always moving quickly, out of sight when noticed. Using basic survival techniques, the pair found a small cave formed by volcanic rocks and took shelter there, keeping watch at night. In the early hours of the morning, they heard May's voice calling to them, but after their previous experience, they suspected it could be another recording or imitation. The next morning, David managed to find Sarah and Michael. Together, they decided that their only option was to try to leave the forest and get help for May. Using natural navigation techniques, they followed the slope of the land, knowing that they would eventually reach a more open area. At noon, the group heard the sound of a helicopter. Using Michael's small mirror, they were able to signal the aircraft. A rescue team, already mobilized due to the group's failure to return the previous day, located and rescued them. An intensive search was launched to find May. She was discovered 24 hours later, disoriented but alive, tied up in a small rudimentary cabin hidden in the woods. The cabin contained audio equipment, recording devices, and other hikers' belongings. The police investigation revealed that a 45-year-old man, identified only as Tanaka, had been secretly living in the forest for almost 3 years. A former tour guide with psychological problems, he had developed an elaborate system to attract and capture visitors using recordings of calls for help. For Sarah, Michael, David, and May, the experience left deep psychological scars. The most disturbing thing, Sarah reflected, was realizing how easily we were manipulated. Our instinct to help someone in danger was used against us, turning us into prey. The case led to a review of security protocols in Aokigahara Forest, with new measures including more frequent patrols and specific warnings about the fake voices tactic that had been documented in at least 2 other previously unreported incidents. And for visitors to the Forest of Silence, the case serves as a grim reminder that sometimes the most dangerous sound in a forest is not an animal roar or the snapping of branches, but a human voice calling for help from nowhere. Footprints in the mud. The case of Marcus Reynolds was documented by the United States Forest Service as one of the most disturbing incidents in the recent history of the Tongass National Forest. The events of those 4 days were reconstructed from search and rescue records and Reynolds' own testimony. Marcus, a 36-year-old nature photographer, had planned a 3-day solo expedition to capture images of the autumn landscape in the world's largest temperate rainforest. Experienced in solo hiking, he had logged his route with rangers and carried gear suited to Alaska's variable conditions. On the 2nd day of his journey, an unexpectedly severe storm forced him to seek shelter. The torrential rain continued for hours, turning trails into streams and completely disorienting Marcus when he finally tried to get back on his way. My GPS was working intermittently due to the dense tree cover, Marcus reported, and the rain had erased any natural markings I could use for reference. As he tried to get his bearings, Marcus noticed something promising: fresh human footprints. In the mud, they looked like they had been made recently after the rain. Assuming they belonged to another hiker who knew the area, he decided to follow them. It seemed logical at the time, he explained. I thought the footprints would lead me back to a main trail or a campsite. For nearly 2 hours, Marcus followed the footprints through the sodden forest. Gradually, he began to notice something strange. The footprints would occasionally form seemingly purposeless circles or detours, only to return to their original direction. Initially, I thought the person was looking for something, or maybe dodging flooded areas, Marcus said, but then I realized the standards were very deliberate. As the afternoon progressed and the light dimmed, Marcus began to feel a growing sense of restlessness. The footprints now seemed fresher, as if the distance between him and the person in front was decreasing. More disturbing still, I occasionally noticed a second set of footprints that seemed to run parallel to the first, visible only on certain patches of softer ground. At dusk, exhausted and increasingly apprehensive, Marcus decided to set up camp on a small, elevated area. As he prepared his shelter, he made an alarming discovery. The footprints he had followed formed a large circle around his campsite. "That's when I realized I wasn't following someone," Marcus reported, his voice still tense as he remembered. "Someone was deliberately leading me in circles." During the night, Marcus heard movement in the surrounding forest, careful footsteps, branches breaking at measured distances as if someone was circling their camp. He remained awake, his hunting knife in hand, trying to discern the direction of the sounds. In the morning, he found new footprints, identical to the ones he had followed, forming a circle even closer to his camp. Next to a nearby tree, someone had left a small arrangement of stacked stones, clearly an artificial marker. Abandoning most of his gear to gain speed, Marcus decided to follow a steady direction, using his analog watch and the position of the rising sun as guides. He deliberately ignored any footprints or markers he found. After several hours of determined walking, Marcus began to notice signs that he was being followed. Occasionally, as I looked back, I glimpsed movement among the trees, never clear enough to identify, but unmistakably human. "It was like a sick game of cat and mouse," he described. "When I stopped, the movement stopped. When I accelerated, I could hear distant footsteps accelerating too." Late in the afternoon, Marcus found a rock formation that offered visibility in all directions. He decided it was his best chance of identifying his stalker. Positioning himself strategically, he waited in absolute silence. After almost an hour, his patience was rewarded. A figure briefly emerged from the trees approximately 100 meters away, a man wearing camouflage clothing and carrying what appeared to be a rifle. The man appeared to be looking for something, or someone, methodically checking the terrain. Taking advantage of his pursuer's momentary distraction, Marcus silently left his hiding spot and moved in the opposite direction, using all his hiking experience to minimize any sound. His escape took him to a stream that had turned into a substantial stream after the rain. Following the flow of water, Marcus eventually reached a forest road where, by extraordinary luck, he encountered a Forest Service maintenance crew. Subsequent investigation revealed that Marcus had inadvertently entered an area where 3 other lone hikers had disappeared over the previous 2 years. Intensive searches were conducted, but the man Marcus saw was never found. Analysis of the footprints and other evidence suggested that the perpetrator was someone with extensive knowledge of the area and advanced tracking skills, possibly a former military officer or experienced guide who had chosen the remote forest as his personal hunting territory. For Marcus Reynolds, the experience ended his solo photography career in remote areas. "The most disturbing thing," he reflected during an interview, "was realizing how easily I was manipulated. Every decision I made was anticipated and used against me. The footprints were not a path to safety. They were a meticulously planned trap." The case has led to a review of safety protocols in the Tungus National Forest, with specific new guidance warning hikers about the dangers of following unidentified footprints and the importance of maintaining consistent routes when lost. And so we come to the end of our 7 horror stories involving people lost in the forest. So what did you think? Which story gave you the most goosebumps? Will any of them make you think twice before venturing alone on an unknown trail? Tell me in the comments which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this dive into the terrifying world of dark forests, don't forget to leave a like. This really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep bringing more scary content like this. And if you are not yet registered, take the opportunity now to sign up and activate the bell.